We've been chatting with this man about the Steelers quarterback situation all calendar year long, and now the calendar has reached August and it's training camp season, and the pads are on for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which means it's time to revisit a chat with our friend Gerry Dulac, Steelers radio network host, and so much more. Good to see you, Gerry. How are you, sir?
Well, Rich, I am fine. I think the last time I was on with you, Rich, you said you recognized the background of the room I was in instantly at the Steeler offices. I recognize that background that you were in. It's a hotel room, which I spend many a night in too many of them.
You are correct. This is a hotel room for sure. And it took me about 16 tries to get the blackout curtains with the plastic rods to actually overlap over each other, so there was no seam of light coming in from behind me, Gerry. So you know that.
Yeah, I was going to say I love what they've done with the curtains.
It's amazing. You should see what they've done with the place. So where does the quarterback situation of the Steelers stand at the top of August, Gerry?
Well, nothing has changed, Rich, from this standpoint. Their plan is still that Russell Wilson is going to be their quarterback. He's going to be their starting quarterback. But what has changed a little bit, of course, is that Justin Fields has had ample time now to take plenty of snaps with the first-team offense. They've had a lot of time here to evaluate him with the first-team offense. Arthur Smith has wanted him to be aggressive throwing the ball because they want to see what he has. And, and of course, we know his skill set with his feet. Where Justin Fields shines is where you would expect him. One-on-one down the sideline or first read slant route. Where he struggles is when he drops back and, has to maybe go through his progression. So we've seen the good and the bad of Justin Fields. But the fact that he's gotten so many reps with the first team, I really think, Rich, this has never been Mike Tomlin's MO. Mike Tomlin has never really believed in taking his starting quarterback out of the game. Now, of course, I say that, and for most of his career, he had Ben Roethlisberger, so you can understand it. So he's not one to kind of just insert special packages into the offense. But, I think with Justin Fields, they'd be kind of stupid to not do that. And two, Arthur Smith kind of hinted at that yesterday. Maybe on a goal line, maybe in the 2-point conversion, things like that. But because as Arthur Smith said, he's dangerous with the football in his hands. And if you feel that way, I can't imagine they'll just let him sit on the bench as the backup quarterback. Unless, of course, something happens to Russell Wilson. But that's the plan. Russell Wilson is going to be the starting quarterback, and we'll see what or if they might work in with Justin Fields.
And the amount of time that Fields has gotten with the ones born out of Russell Wilson being unable to, right? Like that's why it happened for Fields?
Right.
Recently?
And, both Russell Wilson's people and the Steelers have told me, his injury is not serious at all. They're just being ultra cautious with it. And he has participated in individual drills. When you watch him do his pocket movement drills, he goes back and forward with no problems whatsoever. He's gotten in on 7-on-7 and team drills here, more so the last couple of days. But it gives them an opportunity to evaluate Justin Fields. Russell Wilson is fine. He always says if he had to practice full, he could. But he tweaked it on the first day of conditioning. And Rich, in all my years and why this happened, I have no clue why the new training staff would want Russell Wilson or any quarterback, but especially a 36-year-old quarterback, pushing a heavy sled as part of conditioning. And that's how he tweaked his calf muscle.
Is that so? Right?
Yeah.
That's how it happened.
In all sports, Rich, they have, specific training exercises for whatever the sport might be or whatever the position might be. And you ever know, when's the last time you saw a quarterback pushing the heavy sled? I haven't.
It's the same thing. No, exactly. Nor would you really, I guess, outside of the tush push or any.
Right. But
you wouldn't see any
practical
usage of such a thing, right? In any way, shape, or form on a football field. What's your reporting on Russell Wilson's culture fit for in the culture of the Steelers?
Richard,
its ways.
I don't want to say I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people ask me that, and because of, I guess, obviously of what we heard about what went on in Denver, I guess. Talking to some people in Denver, they kind of explained to me what they thought it was. It wasn't disruptive in any form, But to me, what I've seen is Russ is a pro's pro, and he goes out of his way to be accommodating to everybody so far. So far, I see no evidence of what other people have said happens or has happened with him. But when you look at him and what he does, one of the first ones out to practice, stays after practice, works with the guys individually. So I haven't seen any evidence of that. Maybe we'll see what happens during the season. I don't know that that's going to change. But so far, like I said, I mean, you could see he's a pro's pro and why he is who he is. But, all the other stuff, I need to see it first before I'm going to sit here and say that's the case.
Longtime Steelers reporter Gerry Dulac here on the Rich Eisen Show. So all health being equal, there's no sense of Justin Fields balls out in preseason games 2 and 3 and suddenly causes Mike Tomlin to bring Arthur Smith in his office, and there's a big powwow about who's starting week 1, right? Like, this is Ross week 1 in Atlanta. This is going to happen, is what you're saying.
Correct. I don't think there's any question unless Russell Wilson would somehow be injured. But like I said, I think what they've seen from Justin Fields has maybe piqued their curiosity a little bit more than maybe they thought it would have at this point in time.
And a package for him would not be on this new kickoff for special teams, right? As Jalen Warren kind of dropped in a podcast earlier in the spring, that led to a headline or two, right?
Yeah, you left out a word there. Ridiculously dropped in a podcast. I mean, that's never going to put his backup quarterback on special teams. That's never going to happen.
So seeing the rest of the offense with Arthur Smith, what's your opinion of this? Since this is exactly what Steelers fans have been bellowing for, quite frankly, is an outside the Mike Tomlin construct offensive coordinator coming in and putting his newfangled stamp on things and remaking what the Steelers have been on offense. What have you seen on that so far?
Rich, I have thought all along that Arthur Smith was a perfect fit for the Steelers and their style of football. Having talked to Ken Wisenhunt, Mike Mularkey, coaches who employed Arthur Smith when he was with the Titans. You look at Arthur Smith, he lasted through 4 regimes. Mike Munchak hired him, and 3 other coaches retained him on their staff, which tells you what they must think of Arthur Smith. And then Mike Vrabel, of course, eventually promoting him to offensive coordinator. But he's a guy who loves physical football. He's power running. And the Steelers have the perfect type of backfield for an Arthur Smith offense, because let's face it, Najee Harris is the closest thing to Derrick Henry as there is in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to sit here and call him Derrick Henry, but you've seen him, you know what he's like. So if anybody was a perfect fit for an Arthur Smith offense, what we saw those 2 years in Tennessee, you have to think it's Najee Harris. And the Steelers, of course, love Jalen Warren. For the first year and a half, it was number 1 and number 2. But after the way Jalen Warren played last year, it's 1 and 1A. They really like Jalen Warren, and they're curious to see how good a fit he is in this offense too. He had 3 times as many catches, 3 times as many receiving yards as Najee Harris, so he's more effective doing that. But he had 750 yards rushing, and averaged 1.5 yards more than Najee Harris last year. So they like this guy, and they think he'd be a great fit as well. So that's the biggest thing I think that is going to happen with this Steeler offense. And of course, the attention they've paid to the offensive line the last 2 years. 2 number 1 picks, 3 of their top 5 picks this past year were offensive linemen. That's what they want to do. They want to run the football, and they want to run it down your throat.
I love it. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be so much fun. And obviously, Arthur back in Atlanta week 1, and Atlanta unveiling Kirk Cousins and everything that they have going for them with a new coach who obviously Mike Tomlin knows very well from back in the day. That is a fascinating week one matchup. What's going on defensively on that side of the ball that I should know about for the Steelers?
Well, I'm not sure which was the biggest acquisition. Anytime you get a 9-time Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl winning quarterback who probably should have won two, that's a monster acquisition. But I'm not so sure the signing Patrick Queen in free agency wasn't bigger. Certainly, it's as big in terms of what he will mean for that defense. Putting him on the inside, where that's been a revolving door, Rich, since Ryan Shazier's career-ending injury. And then they really like the Landon Roberts from last year, and then they draft Peyton Wilson in the fourth round, who to me could be the steal of the draft, and not just the Steelers draft, maybe the NFL draft. This is a 242-pound guy who runs a 4.43, and he's a guy who can cover. So if you have three guys now on the inside that and it's led by Patrick Queen. To me, that really bolsters a position that has struggled since 16, to be perfectly honest. The cornerback position, they traded Deontay Johnson. They brought in Dante Jackson. That gives them a capable starter. I think where the biggest question on defense, Rich, to me, is the one area they really did little, if nothing, to improve themselves in the offseason is the defensive line. They're counting on Cam Hayward at age 35, bouncing back from an injury-plagued season. They really like Keanu Benton, their rookie from last year. They expect a big jump from him in year two. He is and really can be a disruptive player. But beyond that, they signed Dean Lowry in free agency, but that's depth. They drafted Logan Lee on the sixth round. That's depth. They really did nothing to improve the defensive line. They're just kind of They're counting on Cam Hayward bouncing back and Keanu Benton. Yeah, they have Larry Ogunjobi, but they always keep their fingers crossed with him because of nagging injuries in his career. So that, to me, I don't want to call it a question mark, but in that defense, to me, that's the biggest question mark.
I just kind of find it interesting how the Steelers stepped out of their, for the lack of a better phrase, comfort zone in the quarterback room and on offense. Obviously they, gave a contract extension to Mike Tomlin, and what I think about him and how, much blowback I get when I kind of cape for Coach Tomlin. And you just hear from Steeler fans that it's just been too long since they've, won a playoff game. They don't care about finishing above 500 and just making it as the sixth or now seventh seed if they're going to get, their brains beaten in and not even have a sense of being in the same realm as Super Bowl contenders. But I'm just wondering if the way you've just laid everything out, Gerry Dulac, with stepping out of the usual way they would approach the quarterback room and their offensive playbook, and just staying the course, Steeler way, Tomlin way, in other ways, that this team is, in your estimation, better equipped to end that playoff win drought, Gerry?
Yeah, and it's been 7 years, as you know, Rich, and that's what angers the fan base here. To your point about all the winning records, but then they go in and they get exited from the playoffs in the first round. They've lost their last 5 postseason games. But I don't think there's any question, Rich. They were a 10-7 team last year, and Mason Rudolph came in and basically saved their season those last 3 games. But I don't think there's any question with what they've done with the quarterback room, bringing in Arthur Smith, continuing to address the offensive line, the move to bring in Patrick Queen. I mean, they made big-time moves, and that includes trading for Justin Fields. I don't think there's any question they're better than 10-7, which is what they were last year, of course. So, am I going to call them a Super Bowl team? No, but I think, you could start at 11-6 with this football team, barring any significant injuries. And, I think being capable of winning a playoff game, which would at least be a step in the right direction. But we heard Art Rooney II, their team president, after the season, basically saying he's getting impatient. It's time to win playoff games, he said. And that's what precipitated all these moves.
Well, I mean, winning a playoff game 11-6 would, I would think, put you in the conversation to win the division. I mean, I don't think 11 wins this division. I think there's just too good of a team that whoever wins this division is going to be too damn good of a team. The Ravens wound up being the 1 seed last year. A lot of good it did them. I think it would have to be that would be their best chance, clearly, obviously, rather than being an 11-win team that winds up in the home of the division winner with the worst record, on a wild card weekend. That's just the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, and it's the strongest division in football. They showed that last year. Probably the same will occur again this year. But you look at the Steelers' record in the division: 5-1 last year, 3-3 the year before. They're 8-4 in the division the last 2 years. Mike Tomlin places so much emphasis on those division games, and that's why they've been successful in the division. So if they can be successful again in the division, I think, again, am I going to sit here and say they're going to win the division? No, but I think, 11-6, and I think with a couple breaks, good breaks, maybe 12-5, and then you're talking about possible division championship. So again, I'm not going to predict it, but as I've learned over the years, nothing surprises me.
Yeah, to win the division, they got to finish up strong. If we just to pop the schedule up real quick before we let Gerry go on with his day, their first division game is Week 11, home for Baltimore. Right. They play Baltimore weeks 11 and 16. They play Cleveland 12 and 14, wrapped around their first game against Cincinnati, who they finish up against after. I mean, look at the finish right there. From Week 11 on, it's home for Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincy, home for Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, home for Kansas City on Christmas, and then Cincinnati. I mean, that is, you better make some hay early on. And it's not like they got some easy ones either. At Atlanta, the Chargers should be better, despite what we're hearing about the foot of Justin Herbert right now would be a concern. You got Dallas, the Jets. We assume will be better. I mean, that's a heck of a schedule, Gerry. Right there.
Yeah, and the finish, as you point up, Rich, is the big thing. And I believe, because it's been a while since I looked this up, but I believe it's the latest that they begin division play. I think since the merger, that's how far back you have to go to see them get into the second and third week in November before they play a division game. We just haven't seen that. Usually they have one right away in the first 3 or 4 games. So, yeah, it seems strange to wait that long to get into the meat of the division matchups. But that finishing stretch, and then you have Kansas City on Christmas Day, and at Philadelphia, we'll see what the Eagles are this year as opposed to what happened last year. But, yeah, that finishing stretch is going to be a big time for them, and especially, again, because of how strong that the AFC North is.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your favorite Hall of Fame memory with the Steelers, having tons of people in that bus gallery room downtown here in
Rich,
Canton.
I think I've seen most of them be inducted. I'm trying to think, strange as it is, I don't think I was there for Troy's induction, but I go back to the days, Rich, when you sat on the steps of the Hall of Fame, and it's a whole lot different now. It's more detached. So my memories are being right up there on the steps of the Hall of Fame, watching that up close and personal. Terry Bradshaw's speech still, to me, brings down the house. But to see even Chuck Noll and, all the others go in, I mean, I think I've seen just about every one of them. So I have many, but I would have to say it was Terry Bradshaw, one pointing up to the sky to the chief, Art Rooney, and then saying how he wished he could put his hands under Mike Webster's butt one more time and take another snap. Sitting right there in front of all that, I think is what I remember the most. And, of course, because you're so close to Pittsburgh, the number of Steeler fans that came out for those induction ceremonies.
Yeah, and then he, in fact, did it, right? Then he said,
yes,
I wanted to do it. Then I would love to do it one more time. And then Mike Webster came out and he got a football and he did it. Let it happen.
Well, I think that was when Webby got inducted, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think that's when Webster went in, and then Bradshaw did that, I think.
That's right. Yeah, because that was a classic. Well, there's no doubt. Well, that'll be part of our NFL Network coverage on Saturday. Gerry, always great chatting with you. Appreciate it. Look for more of my calls, as always.
Hey, Rich, thanks, man. Good to be with you as always.
That's Gerry Dulac right here giving us the scoop, as only he can, on one of the more popular teams on planet Earth, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.